Claire Inglis was a loving and happy young mum who was tortured and murdered by a man who she had just begun a relationship with. The judge described Claire's murder as, quote, beyond sadistic. The serial criminal who killed her had 40 convictions and was a known danger to women and children. Yet, he was repeatedly bailed to the home that Claire shared with her young son. Claire's parents, Fiona and Ian, have spent 4 years fighting and indeed pleading for information, and they're here today. It's their third time coming to the public gallery during FMQs. Does John Swinney agree that no family should be forced into the media glare and onto the political stage to get answers from Scotland's justice system?
First Minister.
First of all, Presiding Officer, let me say that Mr Findlay has raised the case, the tragic case of Claire Inglis with me before, and I have had the pleasure, thanks to the assistance of Mr Findlay's staff, of being able to meet with Mr and Mrs Inglis on their previous visit to Parliament. And I can extend my sympathy to Mr and Mrs Inglis about the tragedy that they have experienced. I agree with Mr Findlay that no family should have to suffer as Mr and Mrs Inglis have suffered. The issues in connection with the handling of the case that surrounded the perpetrator of the murder of Claire Inglis are being explored by the Crown, and the Lord Advocate has taken the independent decisions that she has taken on this matter.
Russell Findlay.
Thank you. Ian and Fiona are here out of devotion to their daughter and a determination to force the full truth from the authorities. And as a result of their pressure, the Crown Office instructed a social work expert to investigate the circumstances of Claire's murder. And the expert's report is truly damning. It says that Claire and her son were, and I quote, invisible in the system. And the repeated granting of bail to Claire's home was, quote, a major safeguarding lapse. Now, the Crown asked the expert to establish if system defects caused or contributed to Claire's murder. But Fiona and Ian have not been told the answer to this critical question. And that's because the Crown only gave them a brief summary of the report. So will John Swinney back the full release of this report?
First Minister.
President Officer, there will be issues that will be applied in relation to the release of the full report, which I am not cited on today. What I will say to Mr Findlay is that the Lord Advocate has brought to Government, in her period of office since 2021, an intense focus on the awful experience of victims in our criminal justice system, and indeed I would pay tribute to the Lord Advocate for the work that she has undertaken to bring the perpetrators of heinous crimes to justice. Therefore, I will ask the Lord Advocate if there can be further dialogue with Mr and Mrs Inglis on the contents of the report to ensure that the issues about which they remain concerned can be properly and fully aired. There may well be issues about data handling with which Mr Findlay will be familiar that cause constraints on the release of the full report, if the report can be released, I'm very happy for that to be the case, but there may well be reasons why it can't be the case. But what I will do is I will ask the Lord Advocate to engage further with Mr and Mrs Inglis to ensure that they can have a fuller understanding to try to help them come to terms with the tragic loss that they have suffered.
Russell Findlay.
I agree that the Lord Advocate's focus is sincere and welcome, but the way in which the Inglis family are being treated is cruel and disrespectful. In 2022, Stirling Council held a serious incident review of Claire's murder, which concluded that a full review wasn't needed. The expert disagrees, saying, quote, a comprehensive review was absolutely necessary. But to the astonishment of Fiona and Ian, the Crown Office say they've still not decided whether their daughter's murder merits a fatal accident inquiry. Fiona told me, when we came here last year, we looked John Swinney in the eye and took him at his word that our questions would be answered, but we're still being kept in the dark. So will John Swinney back their calls for a fatal accident inquiry?
First Minister.
Well, I'm trying to be as helpful as I can here. I hope Mr Findlay understands the sincerity of my engagement on this issue. But the calling of a fatal accident inquiry is a matter for the Lord Advocate independently, and I have to, as First Minister, I understand Mr Findlay is able to call for such issues. As First Minister, I have to respect the independence of the Lord Advocate for me to act, otherwise would contravene my oath of office, and I won't do that. What I will say is that I think the process of investigation that was originally conceived of in Stirling Council was not acceptable. It was not good enough, which is why I asked the Crown to look at this again, and why Mr Findlay has in his possession the report that he has, because that was at my instigation that I judged the initial inquiries were totally unsatisfactory. Now, there is a matter of consideration as to whether a fatal accident inquiry would shed any more light on the issue than the exercise that Mr Findlay has. So that's a matter of further consideration. But what I will say is that I will raise these issues directly with the Lord Advocate and ask her for her consideration of these matters to ensure that Mr and Mrs Inglis can have as much support as possible to come to terms with the loss that they have suffered.
Russell Findlay.
Well, another reason that an FAI is absolutely critical is that the Crown's report reveals a major flaw at the heart of Scotland's bail system. It says, and I quote, that social workers are not obligated to verify bail addresses, which explains why a violent criminal and known danger to women and children was repeatedly bailed to Claire's home address. Now, the report describes this as a systemic flaw. My party has published a paper today setting out changes that are needed to fix Scotland's justice system and to put victims first. Now, Fiona and Ian have urged the Government to back this specific change so that courts must check the veracity of addresses and that they are safe. They say that this could prevent another family from suffering such a tragedy. So will John Swinney commit to urgently ending this bail blind spot that is putting women and children in danger?
First Minister.
President Officer, I'm familiar with the points that Mr Findlay has raised this morning, and as always on these issues in relation to the criminal justice system, we will give them consideration. What I would say, which I hope provides some degree of reassurance, is that in the recent legislation that Parliament has approved, the single bail test makes clear that the court should specifically consider the protection of the victim from a risk of both physical and psychological harm before making the decision on bail. Now, in my view, that would provide the type of protection that Mr Findlay is looking for, and it is already in statute. I appreciate that is of absolutely no comfort to Mr and Mrs Inglis in the loss that they have suffered. But what I do hope it reassures members of the public about is that the Government is taking action to ensure that the type of experience that Mr and Mrs Inglis have faced we will be mitigating about that in the future because of the steps that we've taken to change the law. But I will, of course, give consideration to the points that Mr Findlay has raised this morning. And, of course, as always, I'll be happy to see Mr and Mrs Inglis if that would be of any assistance to them.